All right, welcome to B-Sides. Today's talk, SHA-1, Backdooring and Exploitation by Jean-Philippe Aumasson.
All right. Thank you for the introduction. Okay, good morning. Bonjour. So, I announced this talk a couple of weeks ago. I said this would be exclusive for B-Sides. The talk got rejected from Black Hat and DEF CON. They told me it was kind of too technical, so I don't know what it means, but well, here I am. And yesterday night I flight from Switzerland. I was really tired, but I couldn't sleep. And at 4 a.m. I was still, eyes wide open. So I published something on Twitter, and then I created a website for this project. And I published all the details, the papers, and even the slides. So I don't know how many of you have already seen the slides and the details of this work. No one? Okay, really good. Yeah. Okay. So I'm giving this talk, but I'm not the only contributor. Actually, I'm not the main contributor of this talk. My friends from Graz, from this university in Austria, Maria, Florian, and Martin, they did most of the work, let's say, all the cryptanalysis work. They're from TU Graz. Angel Bertini, which is the guy who did this fancy logo, he worked on the binary Kung Fu, all this binary stuff, and I did what I call the theory, so the initial IDs and the marketing things. Okay. So I have three main parts in this talk. The first one, so what is hash function backdoor? It's about backdoors. You know what a crypto backdoor is, what a cipher backdoor is. Okay, you can sabotage cipher, but it's not very straightforward to define what is a hash function backdoor. So I briefly talk about this. Then I explain how we backdoor SHA-1, and then how we exploited this backdoor. If you want to leave the room now, okay, this is what we found, 2 images with the same hash. Okay, I'll give the details. So who is interested in crypto backdoors? I hope all of you. You might know about an organization called NSA, National Security Agency. They've been in the news lately. And they have this kind of interesting document. They created a cipher called duality. I won't give the details, but it's something based on elliptic curves. And some people argue that it's been backdoored by NSA. It's a complicated story, but well, they've been interested in backdoors since at least 1993 with this Clipper chip. Some people would say it's not a backdoor, it's a bit different, it's key scroll, but at the end of the day it's the same. They got your keys. Did crypto researchers pay attention to crypto backdoors and to hash function backdoors? So you might know that the cryptographic community is doing lots of papers, lots of research in very sophisticated things, a lot of mathematics. But not much about, let's say, offensive crypto. Not much about backdoors. It's not completely true. There's 2 guys, Moti and Adam Young, who did this crypto virology project a couple of years ago. It was really interesting, really good ideas. They had some black box ciphers, some backdoor ciphers, but it's not the ideal backdoor you can imagine because it's a black box. You don't see the specs, and tell you the ciphertext is leaking key bits. But if you see the internals, if you see how the algorithm is working, you will see the backdoors will be in front of your eyes. Okay. There's been much more work about hardware backdoors. So in integrated circuit, how to put a backdoor, they call it Trojan. So it works in how to insert a backdoor and how to detect a backdoor. On the hash function side, so I've been doing this paper in 2011. I was really excited. Yeah, let's do hash function backdoors. Had some crazy ideas. But I really failed to make something interesting, make something exploitable. So it was presented at a workshop, but not really what I imagined. So what's a crypto backdoor? It's not, first of all, it's not an implementation backdoor. What I mean by crypto backdoor is something in the pseudocode, in the algorithm, in the math, not in the code. All right. You might know this example of RSA. So I don't know if you see the backdoor here of RC4, sorry. RC4. RC4 is pretty simple. It's just swapping bytes. And there's an interesting backdoor here. I don't know if you see, I don't know, or maybe some of you know the trick. Okay. I highlighted some lines in the red so that you easily find the thing. So here we get a byte, we get another byte, and we swap 2 elements of the array A. And these guys, they are pretty clever. They don't use the simple swap, they use the XOR swap, so that you don't have to use the buffer. You XOR X with Y and Y with X and X with Y, and you permit the 2 values. Okay, but the problem here is that if you swap A, I, and AJ using this trick, then if you have I equal j, if you have the same index, you will set your state to 0. So instead of having random values in your internal state, you will have only zeros. And as you know, the all zero generator is not a good pseudo-random generator. Okay. What's a backdoor is not a trapdoor. So trapdoor is overt. You know that there's something. You know that there's a secret that if you know you can invert a function, a backdoor is covered. It's not supposed to be there. All right. So RSA, the RSA function has trapdoor, which is the private key. NSA has backdoors, and RSA has NSA backdoors as well. And you have a function called VSH, very smooth hash, which is a trapdoor hash function. It's interesting because it's based on the RSA function, so on big numbers arithmetic. And if you know the secret, if you know the private key, if you know the factorization of the big number, then you can find collisions efficiently. And what it demonstrates is that if you don't know the secret, you cannot find collision unless you break RSA. All right. Now what about backdoors? So I wrote this informal definition. It's some secret property that will allow you to efficiently break the hash. So what does it mean to break a hash function? So it can be about collisions. So having two messages that give the same hash, pre-images, inverting the hash function, or something less powerful, maybe finding a distinguisher. I don't know. And now how do you modelize, how do you formalize this backdoor? Because in crypto, to start studying things, we need to have strong definitions. We need to have useful definitions. Otherwise, we can't make anything useful. And once you construct this sabotage hash function, how do you exploit it? So maybe you will create a hash function for which you know one collision, and nobody else will be able to find this collision. But you just know one stupid collision. You cannot generate random collisions. But you can imagine more powerful backdoors, where you can generate as many collisions as you want, or you can generate as many pre-images. You can invert the function on any image. So you have different levels of hash function backdoors. And when you try to formalize this, as we do in crypto in terms of attackers and defenders, you said that we sort of inverse the roles. Here, so if the bad guy, which is usually the bad guy, she's now the designer. She creates the crypto, she defines the ciphers, and she wants to defend her backdoor. Whereas the good guys, who we call Alice and Bob usually, they are the users, and we want to fool them. We want to convince them that there is no backdoor, that the function is safe, and in case they suspect a backdoor, we don't want them to recover the backdoor and to exploit it. Okay. So I won't go into all the details. You can look this up in the paper, but just very briefly, we define a malicious hash function as a pair of two algorithms. The first one is generate. So we take some randomness, some seed, some whatever, and we generate a hash function, so some piece of code or pseudocode, and a backdoor. So the backdoor can be a number, can be a string, can be whatever. And then we have the exploit function, which takes this function h, the backdoor, and optionally a challenge. So the challenge might be an image if you want to invert a hash function. And if you have the backdoor, then you can exploit it and solve the problem. So find collisions or invert the function. All right. So we define two notions, static or dynamic. It's a bit boring, so you can look at this in the paper. But we have, for example, static collision backdoors. What I mentioned before, you just know one stupid collision. You have dynamic collision backdoors. It's more interesting. You can generate as many collisions as you want, or a lot of them. Static pre-image is that you cannot really invert the function in a natural sense, but you can sort of invert. You can generate a hash value, which is, for example, the all zero string, or something that looks a bit suspicious. Now we have to define stealth. So how strong is the backdoor in terms of detectability? So first of all, you want to hide the backdoor. So given the hash function, the good guys, they should not be able to spot the backdoor or to have a suspicion of a backdoor. And in case they know or they're told that there's a backdoor, then we don't want them to discover it. So we have this notion of discoverability. If you give them the hash and how it works to exploit it, to exploit the backdoor, they should not be able to recover the backdoor. Okay. So that's for the theory, and our results are what I call dynamic collision backdoor and detectable but not undiscoverable. So that's a bit boring. So let's move to SHA-1. So have you heard about SHA-1? Yeah. A bit less popular than MD5, but no, it's used everywhere today. It was designed by these guys again, NSA, standardized by NIST. So it was designed in 1995. The design was published in 1995. And it's used almost everywhere. So in RSA or AEP for encryption, in what is called RSA with SHA-1, signatures, HMAC, PBKDF2 for key derivation, password hashing. So you see SHA-1 in TLS, SSL, in SSH, IPsec, and many more protocols. It's used for integrity check also in something like Git in bootloaders for code verification, in host-based IDSs, and for file integrity monitoring to make sure that the files haven't been modified. How it works. So I could present you 10 slides. We're giving all the details, but you don't need to know the details about SHA-1. Just very briefly, what it does, it's just a bunch of additions, XORs, actually not additions, yeah, XORs, and shifts and rotations. That's pretty simple. And it uses 4 constants. So you see the XORs here, the logical AND, the logical negation, and 5A827999, 6ED9EBA1, 8F1BBCDC, and CA62C1D6. So do you see what this means? Do you know what those constants are? Right. Square root of 2, square root of 3, square root of 5, and square root of 10 multiplied by 2 to the 32, and to take the first 32 bits. They use these constants to sort of bring some non-zero values, because if you don't add any random-looking numbers, then you have some symmetry, you have some structure in the cipher, and it's sometimes a little bit easier to break. And they use different constants for each of the 4 rounds, because they want the rounds to be different. Because if the rounds are similar, then some attacks might or might not be possible. Okay, so look at these constants. So SHA-1 is broken, so Bruce Schneider told it, so let's trust him. But it's not that broken. Like I said, it's used everywhere. So if it were that broken, we would be using something different maybe. What they mean by broken is that for cryptographers, as soon as you find an attack that is a little bit faster than the generic one, then you call it a break. What's interesting is that they have collision attacks that have complexity approximately 2 to the 60, to the 64. We don't really know. Some people try to verify this. They set up a cluster of computers, they implemented the attack, they optimize it, and so on. And during for months, they were very optimistic. So, yeah, we're going to find a collision. So they waited, and no collision. So the details of why it didn't work are not very clear, but they may have underestimated the cost of the attack. But what is pretty sure is that there's a way to find collisions much faster, 1,000 times faster than it should be. Okay. So the recommendation is not to use SHA-1 today, but of course nobody cares because they don't have a collision. Okay. So I will briefly describe the techniques that we use to find collisions. So it's based on the state-of-the-art differential attacks. Here you have the message expansion. You take a small block of message of 512 bits and you expand it to something but much bigger. And this much bigger thing, you will process it using the operations I showed before, the XORs and rotation and so on, using the constants. So the little blue squares here are the differences. We have 2 different messages, and they have only tiny differences, maybe 1 bit, maybe 2 bits, 3 bits. And here it's the internal state on the right. So the first step is the top, and the last step is the bottom. And you see how the difference propagates. So at the beginning, you have very few differences, and you have many more. And then it sort of vanishes. So what does it mean when differences completely vanish? It means that you enter the same state. In other words, that you have a collision, what you want. The difficult thing is that it's very difficult to predict how differences propagate because of what we call nonlinearity. If everything is linear, it's completely predictable. You know the difference, the input difference, you can determine deterministically the output difference. So what we do with SHA-1 is first find what we call differential characteristic. It just means a pattern of propagation. So the way we do it is we imagine that it's predictable. We imagine that it's completely linear, and then we compute the probability that the nonlinear stuff behaves linearly. And once we find this pattern of propagation that would give us collision, we try to find a message that will satisfy this propagation and give us collision. That's the details of the pattern we found. Here we have many differences, so it's extremely low probability, much lower than 2 to the minus 40. It's extremely low. But the trick we use is that we use some automated techniques, some automated search techniques to find a message that matches the differences so that we don't have to brute force it. So this comes essentially for free. We satisfy all those created difference pattern essentially for free. And then at this step, it's a bit more difficult. We cannot modify the message because we found a message that satisfies the constants here. So what can we modify? Not the message, we modify the constants. So the first step is what I just described. For the second round, we will try all the 2 to the 32 constants K2 until one gives us what we want. So a good propagation of differences. And we sort of repeat the same thing iteratively for all the 3 steps. So you might notice that here we don't modify K1. The first constant is completely untouched. It's the same as the original one. And then we will modify the next 3 constants. So the total cost of the attack is approximately 2 to the 48. It took us, if I remember correctly, a couple of hours on the cluster we use. But 2 to the 48 is relatively small in terms of computation search. Okay, and we had a collision, so you had to trust me that this works. But if you take the original initial value of SHA-1, if you modify the constants, so you see it's different from the original one, it's no longer a square root of whatever. And you take these 2 messages with this difference pattern, you get the same hash. So we have a collision, not for SHA-1, but for a slightly modified version of SHA-1. What's pretty cool too is that if you take the state-of-the-art collision attacks on the original SHA-1, they use 2 blocks. So SHA-1 would hash the first block and then the second one, and you would only have a collision after 2 blocks. Here we have a collision after just 1 block. All right, so it's pretty useless. You see, it looks like garbage bytes. You don't see how to exploit this. And it's not the real SHA-1, so you would say, okay, your collision is useless and it's not on the real SHA-1, so what is it useful for? So I don't know if you've already seen this kind of thing, but I have seen a couple of cases where customers of some encryption or some security companies say, yeah, we want our personalized crypto. We don't want the same crypto as those guys because we're paranoid or we just don't understand things. So we want different constants. We want different boxes. We want different whatever. And sometimes people do modify the standards. So they want the customers that so you're no longer compliant because it does not match the official specs, but you will have your very own version of SHA-1 or AES. So I don't know, that's one of the motivation for this work. You design your custom SHA-1, you can sabotage it. Okay. And how to turn this garbage collision into useful collision? So not just 2 sequences of random bytes, but 2 actual files of some given format. You might think about images, documents, PDF, or whatever. So the basic idea that is quite agnostic to the file format we'll use is to construct messages as follows. So here you have M1 and M2, which will be the first block. They will be different because we need differences to get a collision. And we'll create M1 and M2 in such a way that semantically they instruct the program, so which might be the command interpreter, the image viewer, or the CPU. In the case of M1, to jump here and start executing the first payload. In the case of M2, we'll completely discard the first payload and execute the second one. So you might see as a simple, if I'm M1, then go to payload 1. If I'm M2, go to payload 2. And that's actually what we did with the shell script example I'll show later. But it's not so easy because we have constraints. The differences cannot be fully controlled. We have to have some differences at, I don't know, maybe the 3rd bit or the 23rd bit. So we can't do everything we want. And a big problem is that in many file formats, you have these magic signatures at the beginning. The first 4 bytes have to be a given value. And what really sucks here is that because of the collision attack, we have to have differences in these first 4 bytes. So we cannot find adamant collisions for file formats that impose a magic signature of 4 bytes at offset 0. But as you will see later, there are some file formats where this signature can be later in the file at another offset. Okay. Okay, so maybe the most interesting would be PEs, portable executable files, the Windows executables, for example. It doesn't work because there's the entry point that is encoded somewhere here, and because of our differential pattern, we have to have a difference at this point, which means that this would create a file of more than 1 gig and this will not be supported by Windows. So we can't find collisions for PEs, we can't find collisions for ELF, neither Mako files. Not today, and maybe if you find a better differential characteristic, we may or may not be able, but yeah. Sorry, this doesn't work at the moment. Something that works is shell scripts. So this is completely trivial. You just put some sharp symbol, so it's a comment in a shell script, and then you can put whatever you want, not only printable characters, but any arbitrary bytes. So you will have differences in this step. And then you can have just a normal shell script where you say, if my first byte is like this, then execute this command, and if my first byte is like that, then do something evil. So we have this example. In this first version, we start with a sharp, and we have 0A at this line. So when we execute it, we have this animal here. And the second one is just a little bit different. You see, there's a couple of differences, but we still have the sharp, and it puts hello world. So what's cool here, it can be hello world, it can be a cow, it can be a deer, it can be a dog, it can be everything. It can be execute this program, it can be launch your internet browser, it can be RM minus RF. So that's pretty cool. But if you look at the shell code, it will be straightforward that you have this if statement, if OD minus blah, 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 blah. So the backdoor is clearly not undetectable here. Okay, what about archives? So I'm not speaking about zip because it doesn't work for zips, but for RAR and 7Z formats, what's pretty cool is that, like I said, the signature doesn't have to be at the 0 offset. So we can have the signature later and start with some garbage that will include our differences. So the idea is as follows. We have two files, so one file here, one file there. So in the first one, it will be sort of corrupted. It will not look like a RAR, so the parser will continue looking for valid RAR archives until it finds RAR2. In the second case, it will look like a valid archive at the beginning, so it will execute RAR1. And again, what's very cool is that you can put whatever you want in RAR1 and RAR2. So it works exactly the same for 7Z. COM-MBR, so master block records and COM files, so maybe not the most used executables today. But what's fun is that there's no signatures at all. The first byte can be a byte of code. So it really starts with x86 code. So here the idea is, again, to use a jump instruction to jump at different offsets and to control this jump based on the differences imposed by the attack, where it works like this. Jump address 1, jump address 2, and we have two different payloads that, again, we can completely control. JPEG is a bit different because it's not code executed like in the previous example. And there's a 2-byte signature. So you have a sequence of chunks in the JPEG format. And what we do is that the first chunk will be commented by one of the two files. So it will not be recognized by the image viewer. Whilst in the second case, it will not be commented and it will be processed. So it will allow you to put two different images in the same file. That technical detail, I don't think it's very, very clear, so I'll skip it, but you can get something like this, and you said they have exactly the same hash. Okay. And again, we can put any images. I was told it was not cool to put images of RSA company here, but yeah, I don't care. Now polyglots, so that's even cooler. So what I showed before is that you construct a sabotage SHA-1, and you can find colliding shell scripts. Or you construct another sabotage SHA-1, you can find colliding JPEGs. But what about if you want to have the same malicious SHA-1 and create both colliding shell scripts, MBRs, and RAR archives? Then you can do it too. And here the trick you use is that the first block will be valid with respect to each of those three formats. So the RAR interpreter will not complain. There will be some useful x86 code, and the shell script will interpret it correctly as well. So I call it virtual multi-collisions because out of one instance of SHA-1, you can find many collisions for different file formats. And not just one collision for each type, but many, many collisions for each of the three types. That's pretty useful. Okay. And even more magic, so here we just have two files, And depending on the structure of the PDF, so we'll also look at the PDF format, depending on the image viewer, so this is Chrome, this is Sumatra, this is Adobe, they have different definitions of the PDF format, so they will read it a bit differently. So we also we took pictures at random, and we have different shell script, different MBRs, and we checked it into QEMU, it works well. That's pretty cool. Okay, so you will have more details about this binary thing in POC which will be distributed at DEF CON by Travis Goodspeed and, yeah, thanks to Sergey. We're here, well, a cryptographer and a binary star work into a bar, so by Ange and Maria. They did a really, really good work, so you can get it for free. It will be here on Twitter. So now I'm going to conclude. I don't know what time it is. Yeah, just 3 minutes left. Okay, so many people ask me, oh, SHA-1 is broken, what can we do? Should we kill ourselves? Or, you know, don't need to worry. It does not affect the security of SHA-1 at all. We reuse the IDs of attacks on SHA-1. It has no implication on the original SHA-1. So far so good. Don't use SHA-1 anyway. So there's always paranoid people, you know, Snowden and all this stuff say, but NSA, they use this, the backdoor SHA-1, you know, we knew it. Well, I think it's very unlikely that NSA used this trick because, first of all, they designed SHA-0 2 or 3 years before SHA-1, and there was a really huge weakness in SHA-0, which suggests that they were not really that smart at that time. An actual collision for SHA-0 was found in 1998. Okay. And the techniques that we use, they were discovered only in 2004, 2005, were discovered publicly. So you can still argue, yeah, but maybe NSA, they knew it. Well, you can still speculate, but I think it's very, very unlikely that they did this on SHA-1. Can we do the same for SHA-256? We haven't investigated this. The good news is that in SHA-256 you have not 4 constants, but 64 constants, so which gives us many, many more freedom to modify the constants. On the other hand, it means many more differences as well, which may or may not be interesting. What's not so good is that whereas we relied on the collision attacks on the full SHA-1, we cannot rely on collision attacks for the full SHA-2 because there is none. The best known attack is on 31 steps out of 64. So the first step would be to expand this quark to find characteristics, to find patterns, different propagation patterns for the full SHA-256. I don't know if it's feasible, but we will probably look into it in the next months. So thank you for your attention. I would be happy to take questions. You can go to this webpage, SHA-1, email us, and that's it. Thank you very much. Yes, cross because it's just it's square root, so then you choose a random, but you can take square root of many numbers, or you can take a huge database of numbers that look like
It shows small cross.
Yeah.
Really.
So.
Like if they said, oh yeah, this expands by, and it out a billion, and 2 billion, like okay guys, this is not very impressive. Okay. Obviously, if I have these too long
to collide the blocks and work them to the same coordinate. Why couldn't they cause